Janelle, can you tell us a little bit about Dot Digital? You guys are such a great partner, and I know you're doing such huge work with brands. So would love that, and then you can introduce Linda.
Yeah, so I have a bunch of questions for Linda. So I'm going to give a bit of background on Dot Digital, but kind of jump into our fireside chat. So Dot Digital today is hosting Linda Balfour, one of our customers, and she'll introduce herself. But we're going to talk a bit about what we're calling the rise of the responsible marketer, because as a company, as a marketing technology company that both handles customer data, but then also is committed to corporate responsibility and sustainability, we've realized that it's so much easier to talk about than to live. And there's so much kind of pressure on marketers, right? We put out the messaging, we're responsible for social posts, we react to things that are happening in the world, but it's a company ethos. It's not something that marketing can drive, in and of itself. So the questions that we have for Linda are going to be, I think, really interesting, because both Linda and Superfeet Worldwide have just an incredible kind of way of approaching this, and it's from a company perspective. So yeah, I'm going to ask Linda to, I don't know if you guys can see her video. Linda can join us. There she is.
Good morning.
Yeah. So yeah, welcome to the rise of the responsible marketer. And so excited to have our customer, Linda Balfour, on, Vice President of Marketing for Superfeet Worldwide. So Linda, before we jump in, just if you don't mind kind of introducing yourself and giving everyone a bit of background on Superfeet.
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everyone. I'm Linda Balfour, VP of Marketing for Superfeet. I've been in marketing, for a solid 20 years now, which is incredible. And with Superfeet for about 6 years, 5.5 years. For those of you that aren't familiar with Superfeet, or those of you that are, we're an insole company, an over-the-counter insole company. And most of you probably know us for something that looks similar to this. So this is our Run Comfort insole, but you may know us as like green or blue if you don't even know the Superfeet name. And so Superfeet was founded in 1977. We're a Pacific Northwest company. We have about 80% market share in running, skiing, and hiking. And we also sell our insoles in like better footwear stores where you would go and get like your classic brown shoes or leather shoes, boots, stuff like that. We started out as a little company that was really focused on skiing, and now we're in more than 5,000 locations around the world. We have offices in Canada and the United States and Europe. And gosh, it's been a great journey with Superfeet. So when we started, if you can imagine like getting an insole right now, you're thinking like, I don't know why I would need an insole, or you have one and you love it. And you're thinking, gosh, I went to this running store and somebody took all this time to fit me with the insole. And they took a lot of it was just this amazing customer experience that I had with the fit process. And so that's how Superfeet has always been. We're traditionally very successful in high touch, high service retail environments. Since I've been with Superfeet over the last 5 years, what we've really been focusing on is taking that in-store experience and translating it into online, so that we're keeping up with where customers are shopping and we're meeting them with the experience that they need and making it as simple as possible online as it was offline. So my time with Superfeet the first couple of years was really getting our nuts and bolts together on the website, making sure that we were on a platform that actually was able to sell people things, which seems silly now, but it was a real thing when I started at Superfeet. And then in about 2017, we really started our direct consumer marketing program in earnest. And since then, we've grown our online business by 4 times. So between superfeet.com and some of our marketplace business, we're about 25% online business. And then the rest of it is global, kind of traditional in-store, high-touch business.
Yeah. So e-commerce site started in 2015. And then, by 2017, it was like, let's focus on ramping up the marketing. But everybody has had quite the experience over the last 18 months. And so what we've tended to do is immediately say, just kind of, how are you? And how has Superfeet kind of not weathered the pandemic, but what's been your experience over the last 18 months?
Yeah, man, like for so many people, it was just a crazy 18 months. And crazy in all of the ways that you would expect. It was really scary for a company that's traditionally very strong at retail. Like our retail halted, right? So that was, it was scary. We had to put people on standby. We had to pivot and do things differently. And it was also really exciting because it gave us time to focus in on the things that were important to us. And it gave us time to reset and hone the things that are actually going to make us, I think, more successful in the future. So Superfeet, I would say, is really, it's a mission-driven company. What we're all about is making a positive difference in all of the lives we touch by shaping a strong foundation. And that kind of mission for us, we wrote it that way so that it wasn't just about insoles, but it was really about the way that we operate in the world and how we do business. And when the pandemic hit, that mission really led us to make some, I think, very smart decisions at the executive team level that kept the entire company engaged. It kept a lot of us working, and it gave people a reason to feel hope during like those first couple of months of the pandemic when it just felt like there was no hope at all. And so what am I even talking about? So, so Superfeet, as I mentioned, like we sell stuff in store. And one of the things that we sell in store is 3D printed insoles. So you actually have to go into a retail store, you get scanned, you walk over and do a dynamic gait analysis. And then what we make for you is a custom insole that's printed to the dynamic motion of your foot. And it's an incredible product. As you can imagine, if people can't go into stores, you're not printing them insoles.
That's not something you can shift online. Like we figured out how to shift so many things online, but that's just not really going to.
Not a thing you can do yet. Soon, I'm sure soon, but not yet. So we had like all of this infrastructure in place, right? We had 3D printers that were just sitting there idle, and at the same time, we had an entire like medical, like hospitals weren't able to get the PPE that they needed, and like there was just this incredible shortage in one area and then surplus in another area. And so what we were able to do is we took those 3D printing machines, and we were able to manufacture a part that was needed for PPE. And then we were able to activate the community around us to do the sewing of these, they're called Papper hoods that you put on your
amazing, the medical terms we've all become familiar with, right?
I know, things I didn't know, but I was glad that we did them. And so, we got these Papper hoods, and then we printed the 3D part, and then we used our team that would have been assembling insoles to assemble these Papper hoods. And we were able to supply like almost 500,000 Papper hoods to hospitals up and down the West Coast, which was really incredible. And it was really driven by that kind of mission of making a positive difference in all the lives we touch. And also brought us back to our company values, which are, innovation, doing the right thing, and keeping people first. So that was the pandemic for us in a nutshell, when you think about like those first 6 months when it was like,
well, you had mentioned we were kind of like talking through your story, and you didn't start the pandemic with those 3 core values, right? Like I think back when the company started, I think you had mentioned there were like 6 core values, but then you also had some brand truths associated with them. But the pandemic really almost like kind of cleared the clutter for you guys there, right?
So you would imagine like a company that started in 1977 with that mission of making a positive difference, and over the years, so 77 to now is what, 43 years, there was all kinds of like values and frameworks that got added into what we did. So we had our 6 brand values, we had our brand truths that were intended to help people understand how to live the values and how to put them into action. We had pillars, we had all these things. And so during the pandemic, what we did is we actually, like as we moved things into action, like those Papper hoods, or as we thought about how we were going to keep people employed and make sure that they got their entire salary, those ideas of like innovation, responsibility to our retailers, to our employees, and to our consumers, and keeping people first really rose to the top. And we were able to look at all of the other things that were around them and kind of fit them into those 3 buckets, so that for the organization going forward, we can really like quickly look back to those 3 values that we have now and say, does it do all 3 of these things? Yes, then it's a good decision for the company. And if it doesn't, then maybe we should be rethinking how we're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, that streamlines things for the whole org too, right? Because it's not always easy to keep mission statements, value props, brand truth. Like it's a lot to retain. If, like you were saying, if you're in shipping, are you going to remember all that? Is that going to resonate with you? Right. So I thought it was interesting. You just, taking the time to do that. But you were busy on the retail side of things too, right? It wasn't just like manufacturing things on 3D printers. Like you had the whole kind of retail and business side of things that you guys had to make some adjustments to.
Absolutely. Right. So, and so as a very strong in-store business, right? And you know that during the pandemic, and as marketers, you were probably all watching the trends that were happening, right? More people were out running, more people were out walking. Rates of injury were going up, but people couldn't really do anything about it. So we had all these things happening that were, our product was perfectly positioned to help people either go further or to avoid injury or just to have a more comfortable experience when they were doing these activities outside of the gym. But the ways that people usually discover Superfeet, like the most obvious ways, weren't available to them. So it really, like, even though we started our online sales journey in 2017, we really took the time during the pandemic to hone those skills and focus in and make sure that we were creating the tools to set our retailers up for success. So simple product videos and explainer videos, updated product detail images, and content optimized for search for our retailers. We also really looked at Amazon a little bit differently, or kind of accelerated the way that we were looking at Amazon and marketplaces as a representation of our brand, making sure that the information that was on there was as clean as possible, which has been pretty difficult for us to get our hands around, but a lot of focus on that. And then also making sure that superfeet.com was the core place for the consumer journey, and making sure that we were as good as possible in that space.
Yeah, I think all of us have kind of revisited our core sites to understand if they were, up to the task of what the consumers needed to find and to evaluate and to compare. And that's a lot of transition, I think, for the marketers on the teams too. It sounds like you have a pretty versatile marketing team that is able to shift back and forth. And I think one of the interesting things we talked about when we were talking about responsible marketing is finding that place, right, that aligns with your core values and with a team that can kind of, I think, executive team, marketing organization that can live up to those values. And so I wanted to, in your bio, which we didn't, it was just, this talk came together so well, but in your bio, you said you have a passion for brands, delivering experiences that leave consumers happier in the world a better place. And so I just want to take a couple minutes and talk through kind of what your journey has been and how you found this organization that just seems to perfectly align with your own kind of journey in becoming a responsible marketer.
Yeah. So I'm probably one of those rare people that actually, like, in college, I knew I wanted to be in marketing, and I got to do it, which is really cool. But I don't think when I was in college that I knew that there was a difference between a responsible brand and any other brand, right? I think like marketing was marketing. And so I graduated and I got a job, and I had some incredible mentors, and they were great. And I kind of learned about marketing, and I was getting promoted, and all these things were really good. And I still just felt like I was not fulfilled in my job, which is really weird, right? When you've got like incredible managers and mentors, you're actually doing a good job in your job, and you still feel like you're all of the pieces, you're like everything's not firing the way that it should be. And so for me, what I started to do to fill that gap, right, was to push some of the things that I was kind of interested in a little bit further. So I started traveling to locations that I wouldn't have normally gone to. I got to go to Nepal, which was really cool. I started doing sports that I hadn't done before. I started like rock climbing and backpacking, and, just looking for like what that place was for me that filled that hole that I wasn't getting at work. And as I started to kind of push further and further into these personal interests, I got really lucky, and I had a coworker who introduced me to a brand that he was like, hey, you should probably check out this other company, even though we were working together someplace, because it is like a really good fit for everything that you do. Like they do a lot of volunteerism, they give back, they're an outdoor brand, they make hiking shoes, and it's a marketing job. And so when I landed there and got that job, everything clicked, right? Like suddenly I was surrounded by people that they weren't all like me, but we all had very similar values. We didn't all do the same things, but we were driven by very similar things. And it was just this incredible feeling to know that when you're putting a product out there, it's a really good product and doing good things for people, but then that the company is also helping perpetrate that and move the, in that particular instance, it was like giving back to the outdoors and making sure that we were protecting public lands and that we were protecting the places that people played. And so once I got there, there was no way I was ever going back to another brand that was doing something that just didn't align with what I was interested in.
Yeah.
And then Superfeet, like when I got introduced to Superfeet, it was that first company only more, because this product, like truly, you put it under somebody's foot and you're changing their life with it in a lot of cases, right? People that couldn't walk before are suddenly, I shouldn't say couldn't walk, they walked in a lot of pain, were suddenly like a lot able to move a lot easier and to forget that they're even hurting them in a lot of cases. That Superfeet had this incredible product. They have a 1% giving program. So we give 1% of all of our profits to different nonprofit organizations, specifically to help people and the environment. And to me, that really signaled that, you know, if they are willing to give away that much of the profit, then obviously to them, success isn't just driven by your top line and the margin, but it's also driven by the impact that you make. And so those were two things that pulled me into Superfeet. And then when you have those kind of balances, the team that it creates is also incredible, right? So it just gets better and better and better.
It just builds.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's interesting that you said, like, you know, we didn't realize when we started our careers that there was this choice to be a responsible marketer necessarily. Marketing was marketing. And that's opening up more now, right? And people that have these similar values, I think, are seeking an organization and a mission, which you kind of end up being around other people that are seeking the same thing. And so I do think that it already kind of is a competitive advantage, right? And when we think about marketers' responsibility in all of this, we're the front line for messaging. And if we're not responsible for messaging that align with our values, it's going to be completely disingenuous and no one's going to believe it, right? And so one of the things I love about Superfeet's story is that you have this passion for it. Superfeet has this passion for it. And so I would imagine it makes, right, the ownership of the messaging more fun and more interesting. And there's some things that the team has been doing, right, to build on that. So can you share how Superfeet has worked through kind of this messaging around corporate responsibility and some of the initiatives you've been able to participate in?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you said it exactly right. Like if it's not driven from the inside, then it's really hard to message it to the outside, because people know when you're not being authentic.
And now more than ever, too.
And now more than ever. Yeah. And there's so many places that you can find it out, right? It's not like you can't hide it anymore. But then there's also this, like, there is, like, I've seen at different places, this disconnect that happens between the executive team and the people that are doing the work, right? So for us at Superfeet, it is really important that there is continuity, or at least alignment and values from every level of the organization and then out to our relationship with our consumers. And it really kind of all depends on this trust, right? Like you can trust us to do what we say we're going to do. Our employees can trust us to listen to them, and that together we'll make as much of a positive impact as we can. So internally, what that looks like at Superfeet is we actually have done our best to democratize how we think about our responsibility. So it may be a great example is, you know, a couple of years ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago, we looked at our executive team and I was the only woman sitting on the executive team. And the employees were like, hey, that just doesn't seem right. And so what it did is it sparked an entire DEI initiative within Superfeet. And what that looks like is we have something that's called a pillar team. And that pillar team actually like makes suggestions and holds us accountable for things that we're going to say that we say we're going to do. Down to things as simple as if you look at our women's running product, the icon on the front of it right now is a woman in a dress, like your typical silhouette. And one of the members of the DEI team said, like, is that, you know, can we message that in a different way that's more inclusive, because that's not representative of all women. And so, you know, it's really wonderful to have people that are throughout the organization thinking about what it means to be responsible and how that shows up from like, is somebody in the warehouse recycling? Because they can make a very easy decision just to throw it in the trash can that's closest to them, you know, all the boxes that come through and stuff like that. So that's one of the ways that we've, you know, really started to democratize how we keep that alignment from the top all the way through the organization and then out to our consumers. Other ways is like with our giving program, we have a giving pillar. And what they do is they give out local grants every year. So we put out a grant application and people send in applications. And they decide where the money is going to go to in both the local community and then any place else where we have Superfeet employees or products sold. And then within that, they decided like, hey, we shouldn't be responsible for all of this. And so they took some of that money and they gave $1,000 to every single employee to give to an organization that's important to them. So really this idea of like building a strong community in the way that, in a way that really is meaningful to employees is kind of infiltrates the entire organization. And these ideas come from all kinds of places.
Mm-hmm. That takes a lot of trust, I think, on the executive leadership team side, right? Because they have to kind of say that they're not going to control all of this. They're going to democratize it. Yeah. And then they're going to react kind of the request of the rest of the organization. So you make it sound very easy, but I think it's probably, it's not been such a simple journey, right? But you guys seem to have figured out kind of how to make it work top down, but then also bottom up.
Which, yeah, and it's definitely not always easy, right? And I think there's a lot of like listening and like real conversation that has to happen, right? Because not every idea is an idea that you can implement.
Yeah.
But being able to hear those ideas and have conversations around them and why, and like figure out what the request behind the request is. And maybe that's something that we really do need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And then the other part of it too is like, you have to be able to trust everyone in the organization. I think the panel right before us was talking about like, how do you respond to customers who are maybe not happy with you, right? Like we need to be able to trust that the people that are answering the phones or responding to email or direct messages, like that they represent the brand. So it's really important that we trust them. And if we can't trust them to give $1,000 to an organization that's important to them, or to hear what customers are saying and bring that back to the marketing team or the executive team, then like there's something that's not going to be working well in the organization.
100%. All right, we have 7 minutes left and we have 2 more questions. So we're hoping to leave a couple minutes for Q&A. If we run a little late, just drop them in chat and we can follow up with answers, or I think we're going to put my email address in there so you can email me and I'll reach out to Linda. So I'm going to combine the next 2 questions and make sure we get to the answer. But one of the things we want to talk about, right? So like responsible marketing is not just around kind of this, around like DEI initiatives and corporate responsibility, but we have an immense amount of responsibility in the data that we request from our consumers, in the security of that data, and maintaining privacy for our consumers, and then delivering on values. We're asking for this information. We can't just take advantage of it. And so I think I'm going to just look at the question and combine. So we wanted to kind of talk through how your team approaches balancing competing priorities of like, give me all your first party data, but then kind of showing that they're getting some value in it. But then also, talking through how you maintain trust with your consumers around the customer experience programs that you guys have. So if you don't mind kind of putting those together, that will take us close to the end here.
Yeah, so we recently did a survey out to I shouldn't say a survey out to our customers, but we did a survey to learn more about people that are shopping for insoles. And in that survey, 80% of people, 80% said that controlling their data was really important to them. It was either important or very important to them. And so as a company that really we try our very best to keep our consumers first in everything we do. When they say that data privacy is really, really important to them, it's incumbent on us to listen to that, right? And make sure that we are doing everything we can to make sure that we are giving them really good value for the information that they give us, but then also that we're keeping that data really safe. And I am lucky because I have a great partner in our IT department and a very smart person running our website who are so concerned with customer privacy and making sure that our data is really clean and very trackable and very hard to get to if you're not Superfeet. And so those things, I think, as a marketer, and some of you are probably thinking the same thing, wow, that's a pain in the butt sometimes when you're like, I just want to like send an email to everybody who will even open an email. And they're like, no, we're not going to do it like that.
I've got numbers I have to hit, IT. I don't want to hear this. Yeah.
Right. Like, so they've got their passion, I've got my passion. But it's really nice to have that balance between that data privacy mindset and then the marketing mindset, because it really does make sure that we deliver on what our consumers are saying is important to them. So that's part of it. But then the other part really is like, what value are we giving them for their data? Because, you know, as we look into the next year to 3 years and the changes in cookie policies that are happening and all that, making sure that we have a really robust database is going to be more important than ever. And so we've really started to think about like customer care and the experience from the very beginning, before people even know about that they want an insole, all the way through until their insole like lands in their house, and even after that. So it starts for us with like providing information on foot health and whole body wellness, helping people understand like, I've got this pain in my foot, what does it mean and what do I do about it? And then they get to our website. We've right as the pandemic hit, we launched an insole recommendation tool where you can put in like what your pain is, what kind of shoe you're shopping for, what your foot looks like, and we'll recommend the right product for you. Or if you just want something that's going to help you run further, we can recommend something like that, say you're not in pain at all. But making sure that we get you to the right product as soon as possible. But then also like looking at all of the information that's available to us, reviews, Q&A, things that are showing up on our retailers' websites, calls that are coming into customer care or email, and starting to understand like all of the questions that people are asking as they're getting into this insole process, and trying to guide them through the journey with answers so that they don't even have to ask, right? So my insoles are coming, what should I expect? How do I trim them? How do I wash them? How, you know, like just all of these things that once you have a pair in your shoes, you realize it's so simple. But if it's the first time that you've bought a pair of insoles, there's a lot of questions that come along with it. And so we really do our best to make sure that we are delivering the right information at the right time for our consumers, to make sure that they're getting the very best experience, and that they're getting what it is that they're expecting and more in a good way from Superfeet.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine as we've been talking about insoles, you know, like you don't realize all the questions that consumers have. That's one of the fun parts about marketing is if you're looking from the customer perspective, it's like, there's so much content there. There's so many things and helpful ways that you can educate consumers. You can help them find you that can be a little bit more fun than maybe just our typical marketing tactics, right? So that whole kind of consumer-centric way of doing things, I think that's where some of the most creative ideas come from.
For sure, yeah.
All right, so that's 1 minute left, so we made it, which is good. And so I just want to thank you so much. It's been really fun kind of hearing your story, hearing Superfeet's story, and just talking about responsible marketing too, because I think it's where I want to go as a marketing. It's where Digital is focused. And so it's always fun to talk to like-minded folks. So I think.
Thank you so much, Janelle and Linda.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Yeah, we loved having you. And I really loved hearing about your values of innovation, responsibility, and keeping people first, and how that sort of rose to the top and became more clear. And so thank you so much for inspiring a question actually for our Founder Made community. And that is, what are your company and brand values? So go ahead and add that in the chat box. And thank you so much. You could